Now, will people also write me notes, or you'll jump in with questions too?
Sure.
So, yeah,
Sure.
okay. Yeah, now he's not allowed to, right? 'Cause he's,
No.
yeah.
No, you can't.
Well, but it's sort of, it's, I think it's, direct family, not in-laws, right? You're allowed to write me notes, though, for questions. Yeah. Are you gonna do any introduction, or?
No, well, we'll cut this out.
You'll cut-
and
oh,
so
I
it's
see.
recording
Oh,
now.
you mean
and
it's
can
rec-
just,
oh, it's-
we'll
oh,
just
it's
take
recording
the,
now.
the good
Recording
pieces
now.
and
Right.
put those into the video.
Right, okay, all right. So we're following up on some of the earlier questions and discussion we had, and we all loved seeing and hearing about it. And golly, I had a lot of questions. Could you tell us anything more that you can remember or think about in terms of Grandpa, his life, his family?
Grandpa?
Grandpa, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, before, when you met him, not later on, but
Yeah, I think
where
it's
did
pretty
his
well.
family come from? What were they like? Anything you can remember from that?
Well, as far as I know, they were living in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
But
But had they always been in Chicago?
What?
Had they always been in Chicago?
I think so. I think his mother had, I mentioned that she'd been active in the Moody Bible Institute group, which was in Chicago, based in Chicago. So I think they were born there, and possibly his father may have been born in Canada, because that's where his grandmother, on his father's side, originated. But I think they were all Chicago people. But his mother had died, and he was sort of footloose, but wasn't too much attached to home.
How did his mother die?
What?
How did his mother die?
I really am not sure. I don't.
Was he very,
We probably discussed it, but I really don't know.
was he very young when she died?
He was about 16, I think, or 15, I think.
Yeah.
So she wasn't too young, wasn't.
Yeah. Now, I remember Grandpa speaking a little bit of German. Was that just what he learned in school, or was that from his family?
There wasn't, as far as I know, it was more Scotch-Irish on his grandmother's side. His father, grandfather, Jacob Martin, I think, was of German descent, and I believe he was from Canada also. But I never met him. I didn't know him at all.
And it's Cora was his mother.
Yes.
And that's where the
Cora
family
was
name
his
Cora
mother's
comes
name,
from.
and Arthur, his middle name. Middle name was his father's name. Actually, Grandpa was Lowell Arthur Jacob Martin.
Oh, now see, I did not know that.
Yeah,
Did not know
the Jacob was in there too. Why? I don't know. That was all before me. We just never discussed it. Yeah, we didn't talk a great deal about background, about family,
There we go.
I don't know why family just never, I guess we were so absorbed in making our own lives, which was difficult at the time with the Depression and the question about jobs and things in the future. But we managed to work that out. But you do know that I did work until Jeff was born, which was 7 years after we were married.
At the library you were?
Yes, I worked at the library all the time. And they put me in a branch because I was pregnant at the time, and it worked almost through to the end. And, but I was active all the time. I remember going up at the Chicago Symphony, going up the balcony steps to the balcony. 7 months pregnant.
Oh,
But I worked, until the end, but then I stayed home after that.
They didn't have rules on pregnant women working because
Evidently not.
at that time that kind of rule was common, that women had to leave after a certain
Yeah,
number
they put me in
of
someplace
months.
but no, in fact, maybe she was doing it because she wasn't too fond of me or disapproved of me or whatever. The librarian from the Hill branch where I was put me in a new branch. that was just opening, no catalog or anything, and it was really rough because the people there were very interested in their library, because it had just opened. But it was one of those storefront libraries and all. But it was a new place, and no, she put me, then later on, they did put me back working with books in the back rooms and the like, so I wasn't too obvious.
So after Jeff was born, you went back to work?
After Jeff was born?
Right.
No.
Oh,
I didn't go back until I went into teaching.
oh, okay.
That was when you were in high school and Jeff was through with high school, I think. I think he was, I don't know, was he first year at Bucknell? I can't remember. But then I went, but I had taken classes before going into, because I didn't have my bachelor, it was all Dad's future that we were
So you
thinking.
worked so Dad could go to school?
I worked up until, yes. By that time, he was pretty well, maybe he had gotten his master's by that time. Can't remember the dates. I've got the diplomas, but I haven't looked at the dates for a long time. But you were born when he got his PhD. But he had been at the university for some time before that, and then on the faculty and everything. So, working while he got his working on his doctorate. But yeah, you were about 4 or 5 months old, I think. I don't know.
So when the two of you were getting started in the late 20s and during the Depression, you had no help or support from family. Those were very difficult times, and you were on your own, basically?
Oh,
the
yeah,
two
both
you?
of us, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we neither had family support, no. But, I don't know, things were cheaper then. I mean, the prices of things were, and if you look at the old movies, you'll see that when they say they made $15,000 a year, the main star, Cary Grant and Mr. Blanding's Dream House, he says he made $15,000 a year, and here he's building this big mansion. And $15,000 a year is, what is it today? But no, $4,000 a year was a good salary at that time.
One of our family legends is your honeymoon in the Model A4,
Yes,
am I right?
that I think, isn't that in there? Yeah,
Yes,
that's
you
in there.
mentioned it,
Right.
but you mentioned it in the earlier one, but anything more you remember? Like, I feel like I remember stories involving parking in
Cowboys coming
farmers-
by and
farmers' fields and being chased away.
Yeah, I think is that
Is that
in
it?
there for the
We
farmer?
talk about it a little bit. It's
And
in
the
your
farmer
memoirs, certainly.
Said, what are you doing in my cornfield? And Dad said, we're not hurting anything, we'll be gone in the morning, and he decided to let us stay, so he turned his porch light off. But I remember being awakened by the cowboy going by, I don't know whether I mentioned that earlier, going by with a herd of cows, and the cows putting their heads in the car window and mooing at me, and the cowboy going by and tipping his hat. But it wasn't anymore, I can't remember if we stayed in other places too, probably in garages, or gas stations where they were closed and the like overnight. But we'd be gone early in the morning.
That was well before the interstate highway system, so it was all pretty much.
We had no
synchronous.
problem with police or anything like that, no. And it was is the depths of the Depression. I mean, you had these people just wandering the highways, no jobs, begging, every place. It was bird lines all over and the like. So whatever people did was, and as long as they weren't violent or anything, it was pretty well accepted. Yeah, we didn't have any trouble. So.
Tell us a little more about your perceptions of being
Just
a
a second.
female.
Hold on.
Yeah, you have lived, entirely, 90 years of it through a century that when you were born into the century in 1910, women couldn't vote, and yet, you went on to a career, an advanced degree, a life of your own. Tell us about how you were raised and sort of that transition as a female through that time.
Well, you know, in the library profession, we were all women. So there wasn't the competition there, but I think, and your father had no problem, of course, because being a man. But you mean, was I involved politically or anything?
Well, or just what did you face as a female? You know, I mean, for example, I mean, I guess by the time you were
Well,
old
see, I
enough
was
to vote,
only 10
women-
years old when the women did get the
Okay,
vote.
yeah.
And then the 20s, I don't think, that was my teenage era. I don't think I thought much about it. Not much about it.
Do you have any perceptions of things you
Not like
wish
I
you
feel.
could have done or you would have done sooner or whatever? Had you been born at a later time when
I don't
it
think
was
it
more
ever-
acceptable for women to do many of the things you've done?
I don't think it ever occurred to me. I think my problem was to just build myself a happy life as I could under the circumstances. I don't think it ever, I was always liberal politically, voting, but not like I am feeling personally involved now in things. It just didn't, it was such a struggle, it seemed to me, to really build, at that time, to build I didn't think too much about it. You thought more about getting your job and getting enough money to exist on, and jobs were, it was hard times. Jobs were very scarce. I mean, we talk about hard times now. There's just no comparison with the early part of the Depression. The long lines of people getting, the long bread lines and everything.
And yet you, while you said it was a struggle, you and Dad,
We
obviously-
were fortunate.
Yeah,
We
you both
didn't
had
have
jobs.
that problem, yes. We always had enough to get along, and even to save a little bit so that we could, go on, do things that we wanted to do. And then never saved very much, it wasn't very much. But your father did get into a full-time job pretty quickly in the library. And we were both, working full-time and then he progressed very rapidly with his, in the public library, Chicago Public Library,
Did you
while he was going to school.
Did you see your relationship with Dad all the way through your relationship and marriage with him as a partnership?
Yeah. Oh,
You know,
yes,
couples
definitely.
now tend to see their relationship as a partnership, but that
Yeah.
wasn't always true in your generation. It was sometimes,
Yeah,
the
true.
man
No,
was
no,
in charge, the
there
man
was
was
that.
dominant.
We agreed on most everything, It was, we just pooled all resources.
Were there
We had
anything-
there was really no family there to stop us, no friction in the family. We just did as we wanted to.
And you agreed on things as a partnership.
Oh, yes. I think.
Well, I don't remember you and Dad fighting. That's
No.
okay. I don't remember any
I
arguments.
can't
in the
remember
home.
not disagreeing on basic things.
No, I don't remember arguments and
Yeah.
so forth. Yeah. Now, family wants me to ask how bratty and what a pain in the neck your children were.
Oh, I don't think, Jeff was a little tough to handle. He was kind of high strung. I mean, you can sense it now too. But you were a good kid, easy going. Except one day, I remember this little incident. There was some librarian, I don't know where she was from, visiting us in Ridgefield, I guess. I shouldn't make faces because I'm on camera. I think when we were living in Ridgefield, I think. And where she was from, I don't remember. But we drove her around a little bit, and she sat, I can't remember, I think she sat next to you in the back. I don't know where Jeff was, but you were not, you were there. And everybody thought you were the cutest little girl, and just such a good little girl, sweet little angel. But this time you sat there in the back and you put a blanket over your face. And your father was so annoyed with you. There's the perfect little girl, so they say, he said. Now, why you ever did that, I don't know. You probably were shy or something. But anyway, I don't remember any real difficulties.
So you got used to Grandpa's impatience?
Did I get? No, I never got used to that. No, he was a little hard to handle. You know.
But
He
you
was-
found a way, did you have a way of calming him down or dealing with that? Or
No, I think maybe, to tell you the truth, maybe I aggravated him a lot. You know, it was a sort of a conflict there. Me trying to calm him down and getting annoyed, and him getting even more frustrated and upset with things. But there are times when we just let him do his own thing. I remember having big parties down in the basement. I never didn't go down much to check to see what was going on down there. Down in our room down in, this was in Metuchen, I think. Yeah, we had a room down there.
Oh, sure, yeah.
With a
This
pool
was
table.
Jeff having,
Yeah,
Jeff
what?
having parties?
Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't remember you having much. I don't remember.
No, I don't remember having
No,
parties.
but he did. He always had his high school pals there,
Mhm.
and what else?
Tell us more about the summer place in Maine, why you decided to go there. And
I think I have that written up, don't I? And then one of the things I can't remember. I think it's written up
Yeah,
about Maine.
some
Yeah,
of the,
I could
the
read
list
it
of
to you if
places.
you want, but it is.
Well,
pretty-
we'll have, everything you wrote, we'll have that as part of the collection.
Okay.
But any extra
Yeah, well,
comments?
in
you
Maine,
want-
it was a group of Columbia librarians. The librarian of the,
It was always Maine when I moved.
Right, right. Well, let her answer Maine and then I'll answer that one. Okay, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. First, we were asking you to tell us more about Maine,
Yeah.
why you picked Maine.
We went to
why you
Maine,
stayed with Maine.
actually, we went many years. First, we just rented up there. And we rented from a man named Dillenbeck. Do you remember?
Oh, yes.
Dillenbeck, okay. He owned that whole, or whether his wife owned it or he, or whoever, the family owned it. That big whole complex, a number of cottages, which he rented out. And we were in the least, not the best cottage, up at the top of the hill, where it didn't have any hot water or anything. And we left it, that was the first time, we were only there once, I think, maybe twice, but he told us that we couldn't come back. He wasn't going to rent to us anymore, because we had told you and Jeff to wash the dishes while we packed to go, and he didn't think the dishes were clean enough. He inspected everything. So we didn't go back there, but we rented from somebody else further down at the lake. Maybe you remember that cottage more. Or Bill, do you just remember the one that we owned, that we bought? That was very close to where we were before. We rented that, remember that cottage, the other one down closer? That was
Right,
a
yeah.
nice cottage, Joe. And then we bought the one also sort of close to the lake, but up a little bit. But in fact, I don't think we bought it from Dillenbeck. I think somebody else owned it. We bought it. We probably wouldn't have sold it to us, I don't know. Or maybe by that time he accepted us. But there was really a lot of people. Do you remember the Logstons? He was in the Columbia Library, not the school, in the library itself. But he did go to the school then later, to the library school. And then there was Price, what was his first name? I can't remember. Who was head librarian in the Columbia Library. I don't remember his first name. And you remember Shaw, Ralph Shaw? They
Right.
came and visited us. They did. I can't remember whether they rented a cottage there or not, but it was all library people. Almost that whole complex. And then we bought. And how many years were you in that cottage?
Long
Built
time,
the
many
deck
years.
on it, and the screen. I think it was the porch. I can't remember. The porch screened in. It was a nice cottage.
Oh, you did a lot of work out there.
Yes. Should have taken all that handmade furniture, that rough hewn
Right.
furniture when we left, but we didn't. Anything else you want to know?
Am I remembering right that the very first place, the one way back up on the hill, did not have hot water? I have these
That's right,
memories
that's what I was
of
just, I just
of
said.
you boiling the water so
Yeah,
you
you
could
boil
have a
the
bath.
water, you boil the water to take a bath, especially after, cold water in the lake. And you want to take a shower or a bath, yeah, heat the water. But then notice that Dylan Beck didn't like the way the dishes were left. So, you should have inspected after you kids.
I have these memories of complications with Dylan Beck the whole time you were there. You know, there was always, he didn't do the road, or there was always something.
Dylan Beck?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, when we were up the top of the hill?
Well, and when you were down the hill, when you owned the place, you still had to deal with him because he did the roads. and
Oh,
that.
really? Oh, okay.
Well, that,
I'm
these
not
are
surprised.
your memories. I don't want to do
Yeah,
my
I'm not
memories. These are-
surprised.
These should be your memories.
That's probably true.
And then we were wondering, were there other places that you and Dad traveled to, particularly early on, where you traveled to, or later where you took the family? I mean, I certainly remember going to Maine.
Oh, there was Mexico, of course, that long trip to
Yeah.
Mexico.
Well, even later on, where were some of the places that stick out in your mind as absolutely beautiful or fascinating places that you visited?
That we went to?
Mm-hmm.
I have, in my memoirs there, I have a resume of all the last 5 cities that Dad did for surveys, and each one was more interesting than the other. I think I mentioned there, Portland was my favorite, and that was the last one. We were there 3 months, and we've been to so many places that I found all of them very interesting.
Nothing stuck out. I remember Grandpa talking about Lake Tahoe. It's
Yeah,
sticking out in
right.
his mind as well.
I also remember Grandpa talking when we drove around the Peloponnesian Peninsula in Greece. It's a big peninsula south of Athens. And we drove around, and he was going to retire to Pylos, the city at the up a big steep incline over the sea, all white. Of course, all the cottage homes are white in Greece. They paint them white every year, I think. And have you been to Greece?
No, we've talked about going.
It's interesting.
What was it like in those days?
Where? Greece?
Yeah.
Greece. I don't know whether it's changed much, but they retain all the ancient Grecian monuments, of course, the Parthenon and the Vestal Virgins and the Acropolis. Was that in Greece? Yes, the Acropolis. And but what we enjoyed most is crossing the Corinth Canal, Corinth, and then it's Corinth on the mainland, and then you cross over to the peninsula. It's a great, it's almost bigger than the country of Greece, the whole peninsula there. I enjoyed. What else did Grandpa? Do you remember Grandpa saying that he liked? Tahoe, I don't. We've crisscrossed the United States back and forth. When Dad doing the library surveys, back and forth, north and south, east and west. And I remember enjoying the cities, staying in them and enjoying them. But I like the foreign travels abroad.
I'm especially fascinated in hearing your memories about Iran and his
Iran.
work for the
Oh.
Shah.
That was interesting at the time. We were sort of protected there. We were protected in Iran. That was a dictatorship country, the Shah. But he veered toward the west, toward America, Britain, France, and sort of away from the Middle East. And eventually that's what did him in, of course. But there was armed guards, even getting into the university when Dad had to get into the university for conferences and the like. And At first, to go back to the beginning, at first it was an international study, and someone else was in charge of it, somebody here from the States. And there were people from all over Sweden, England, mainly England, and France, and other European countries, Germany, to give consultation, because the Shah wanted this an international, this was going to be like the Library of Congress. This is the National Library of Iran, or it was called the Pahlavi National Library. Pahlavi was the Shah's family name. And we never saw the Shah, but there were pictures of him. I mean, you didn't have to have pictures of him all over the country. There were a lot of it, wives and husbands of the consultants. There were about 30 or 40 of them. And as I said, Dad was not in charge at first, but the fellow who was in charge, you probably know him. He was from California, I think, in the library there.
In charge of the Iranian study?
Yeah, he was in
Is
charge.
that Nasser Sharifi?
No, Nasser was Pratt Library. He was New York. He was
Okay.
from the Pratt Institute. Library school there, or it was it a library school or a library? I'm not sure. Anyway, no, Nasser was an Iranian by birth. No, this was someone else, some friend of his, I guess. But he was not a very stable person, and so he couldn't keep up. He had too, liked the bottle too much. So they replaced him, and then they asked Dad to take over, because he was, that editing and surveying and he had done so much of. So he took over and was in charge of the whole organization.
Were the consultants highly paid?
We got a lot of money. There was a lot of money, yes. Reals, I remember coming to visit, and the reals all over the bedroom dresser, from that, yes.
Or paid in cash?
Yes, evidently, because I remember the cash money sitting around. Now, maybe not all of it was, but all the time, I don't know. But there was a lot of money made. Oh, yes. They were at the shop, very well paid. But there were guards around all over, as I was saying. And even the guests, like the wives, I went with about 5 or 6 different wives when we were taken to lunch. We were taken to lunch at the old library building. They were replacing it. They were going to build a new one the next year after the survey, after the report was finished. And of course, they never got to it. But we went to the old library for lunch, and we always had an armed guard to drive us there, and an armed guard to admit us, check us off. And wherever even walking, Dad and I would try to avoid the parties and stuff once in a while, and we'd just take a walk on our own through the town. And this was at night after they had finished work, and you felt very uneasy. Very uneasy. Somehow there was people, as if you were being watched. But anyway, so maybe these armed guards were necessary. Then the story was, now whether it was true or not, I don't know. The story was that the guards were from Israel because they were so well trained for Secret Service. That's the story I heard. Whether they really were, I don't know. Because the Persians, they look very much like the native Israelis. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. The Persians are not Arabs. The Iranians are Persians, They are a little different. They look like Arab, but they're somehow they're just a little different. Sort of a handsome people, I thought. Interesting that the women, the Shah said that they could wear Western clothes, and many of the educated women did that we associated with. But many women wore what they called a chador, Chador, I think. But it's pronounced that way, I'm not sure, but I think that was the way it was spelled. The long black robe, and they would hold the veil over their face, and then you would see the red nail polish, holding the veil, and then Tola shoes that they could wear. They wore with red nail polish on there. It was interesting, the contrast. But it was a country trying to be something else, and he just didn't succeed.
So what years were you there? That was just
We
before
were
the
there,
revolution?
I think it was the 75. this summer. Dad was there 3 months. I went there just 2 weeks,
So
just to
that was
visit.
a tense time in the Middle East, just following the war with Israel and the deep feelings about the Palestinian conflict at that time, right? So seven-day war was what, 73?
We had been, yeah, we were in Israel before that. We visited Israel before that. It's interesting. That we visited Israel in the 73 war. That's when they lost to Egypt. They had to get, was that the one they won in 6 days? I'm not sure.
Was that maybe 68 when they?
Yes, yes, it was earlier. Israel was really very confident, almost you felt overconfident. And it was the year before, it was 72, must have been, because 73, I think, was the Egyptian Israeli war. I don't, so we were there before in Israel, before going to Iran. Iran was about Dad's last project, because then we moved. Remember you helped him work on it at home in
Yes, I did.
Metuchen, and then we moved to Lake George, and it was. Did he do any surveys? Yes, he did New Hampshire, I think. When we lived on Lake George, he did
Mobile?
a couple of.
Yeah, yes, I thought you still did some of the, I don't think you
Yeah,
did the
just
international
close
surveys,
ones,
but I
but
think you did.
the big ones seem to have disappeared by that time.
Right, but I think you did, I thought you did some of the national ones still after you were at Lake George.
Yes,
I'm not sure.
but not. I think just close by. I don't remember. I think I remember the others before that.
Yeah.
But Iran, I thought Iran was interesting, but never. I felt that the Shah had a good hold there, but he really didn't. Except, as I just said, we felt uneasy, and the fact that he had to have so many guards around. That it was not a good situation.
Now, in the 70s, you had, in addition to Iran and the traveling and moving to Lake George, you also had grandchildren born during that decade. Do you have memories? Certainly, for example, for us, you took care of Scott and Dana a great deal. You were with us a lot. We traveled and you
Well,
with
I
the
remember
children.
first Andy. Yes.
Now that was
When Andy was born, he was the first one.
He was the
yes.
first, and that was.
And we
60
went. Your father was with Grolier then.
67, I believe, for Andy.
Yes, he was with Grolier, and he went to the Tokyo office for Grolier. That was another nice thing about Grolier, because they had offices in Spain, in Mexico. I was in Mexico many times with Dan when he would go, and then I would follow him because I was still teaching. And Tokyo, Spain, where else? Oh, and of course London. They had some things published in London, and we were there for a while. But Andy, Teddy, Andy was born in White Plains, and then she and Andy joined Jeff at Fort Sill. And so when I went to join Dad in Tokyo, I went to Fort Sill and stayed there for a while with Andy. And so I babysat with him for a while. And then I went to San Francisco, and then Hawaii, and then Tokyo. That was an interesting trip. All by myself. That was an interesting trip. Anyway, that was Andy. I remember Andy coming up, he was about 7 or so. Coming up, we're taking him by himself, just Andy, no parents, to Maine for us for a while. And some friend of, maybe you may know them, some friend of Teddy's were renting down the street with another boy. They had a boy too about Andy's age, and this little boy came to visit with us in our cottage in Maine, and he cried for his mother all night. And I can remember Andy saying to him, "Don't worry, you're okay." A big shock, But we took the children quite a bit, and then Cindy, we babysat quite a bit for Andy and Cindy, and then your 2 kids. even more, I think, because we were always closer.
Mhm.
And
I'll go.
am I on now?
You're on. Okay, actually this came from a couple other people. What is the view like at this point in your life? You've obviously lived a very long life and you've had a very successful family from an external perspective. So two-part question. What is perspective on life at this point for you? Like has it changed, and how does it feel with such a long way to look back? And then also, are you proud of the life you have, and does it feel as successful as it seems externally?
I'm glad you asked that question because I have a very positive feeling about my life and my family. I'm really very grateful. And I am grateful. I miss your father very, very much, Shannon. Because we were so close, so many years. And I don't know, we sort of were almost like one person, even thinking about doing things or anything. And I can't remember something. We must have had some disagreements, but it just were not that important. But I feel that the life I've had since I've been married, and that's a long time. It was 69 when
69
Dad died,
years, I think.
and
Yeah.
it would have been 73 by this time. That's a long. I feel that it's just no comparison with my life before. It was just as if I began to live then. And it's been even with all the hard times and everything, it's been very.
You're saying marrying Dad was no comparison with your life before
Oh,
marrying Dad?
heavens,
Yeah.
no. It was just entirely different.
So the world's a very different place.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but it's a long time that it's been doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been interesting because the Depression was such a strange time, very hard, difficult time. Not so much for us because we managed pretty well through it, but the whole situation, it was almost like a hopeless situation. But it was amazing after the war, this change. With the Marshall Plan and other plans that Roosevelt had, building up and Truman, building up Europe, it made it entire different situation here in this country.
You mean in
And-
terms of feeling of security, in terms of
Yes.
economic success?
Yes, right.
There have been, through your lifetime, just tremendous amount of technological changes, automobiles and telephones and TVs and computers.
Yeah, maybe that's why I like the old movies, because all those old times, all those cars that are so familiar, and people smoking all over, and they're just, they're not only that, but they're good movies. But there's very little sex in them, at least the ones I watched. There may have been some early on. In fact, there are some cult movies that you can see in life, but I don't look at those. Those are a little depressing.
But you feel, have any of these technological changes over, your long lifetime, a time when there's been just dramatic changes, have they had any real impact on your life, or are they just not what's most, when you talk about your life, you rarely refer to them in any way?
All the technological changes?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I guess so, but it's been so gradual. Well, now, what do you mean?
Is there a difference in your life from radio to television, from automobiles to airplanes? Has any of that made any difference?
So, I guess I just sort of took everything for granted. I was able, there was no stopping. Whatever came along, I had. I used, the television, the different cars, and airplane travel, but now I'm afraid I am at a standstill. I know nothing about the electronic age now. I can't work a computer or an iPod, or it marvels me that everybody in the family has all these gadgets and I know nothing about them. But maybe I don't need them anymore. Okay,
Did you
and
have more, Scott?
Yeah, I've got a few more.
Okay, I do too. Go ahead.
Going back to politics, and we can cut and paste this from the video back
Yes,
into
I'm
where
sorry,
we
I just
talked
kinda
about
jumped.
politics.
Yeah.
What are some of, obviously you've got strong opinions about politics, and you've got a left-leaning bend. What do you think your influences were that pushed you in that direction? You said maybe even back to Al Smith, you've been leaning Democratic.
yeah.
You know, what in your life do you think helped mold those political opinions?
I'm not sure. It's that maybe to me it's always been within me to feel for the, politically anyway, for the next person. I feel that the the Democratic Party is more for the common man and less for the rich. Not only the rich, but prejudice, I guess, is what bothers me. Prejudice against any other person, black, any other race, any other religion. So that's why I guess as far as religion is concerned, I just don't. I've never accepted it anyway. I've never been part of any religious, even with my grandmother's holiday celebrations and the like.
Do you have any spiritual feelings about what will happen to you or your soul after you pass away?
I think about it sometimes, but I don't let myself dwell on it too much.
Okay.
What's this? Oh, your father, Bill and I are listening to that tape, and we'll finish it up going back. And I'm the one who wrote Tuesdays with Maury. I forget the name of the other. I have it in the bedroom.
Is it Mitch Albom?
What?
Mitch Albom?
Yes. Yeah. Okay, Mitch Albom. He's got 5 people you will meet in the afterlife, or something. And it has to do. It's a strange book. You have to listen rather carefully. But it's about a very plain man, sort of a nondescript person, who gets killed, and then the people that he has known that he meets in the afterlife. And I guess you relate to that, as you say. Who will you meet maybe in the afterlife? But I don't believe in that.
No.
I don't really believe that there's an omnipotent God that will solve all problems either, or help you out. So I guess I don't dwell on it. Once in a while I do.
Yeah.
But I think of all the things I have in my apartment that somebody's going to, whoever comes in there, or whoever of you come in to take it apart, what you're going to do with all that stuff.
Well, while we have you on tape, are there specific things you want to make sure that whoever comes in, that something that
I don't care what happens to
something
it.
that might go to charity, or something
I don't care.
you
No,
want
it doesn't make
Andy
any
to
difference.
have, or something.
And no, now Shefali has mentioned something about some of the paintings, the pictures I have. And Teddy has mentioned, I think she mentioned about whether she still wants them. I have no idea. I never asked her about those plates that I have up on the wall. But you'd have to, I haven't discussed it really with anyone.
So you tend to think more of the physical things rather than any sort of spiritual next step. That's it. That's it.
Now,
When you pass away,
Yeah,
that's it. You've had
Yeah.
your life, and
Yeah.
that's the
it.
end of it.
okay.
Is that the way you view things?
Now, I'm not sure.
No afterlife, no kind of metaphysical next stage in your existence or anything like
No.
that? No.
That I never think of, no.
Okay.
Is there such a thing? I wouldn't think of it. Do some people believe in that? I guess they do, yeah.
Some people do.
Yeah.
That reminds me of another question. This goes way back to, what you remember of when you were very young. But, and this is probably in the journals, which I haven't read yet, that you had another brother in addition to Stuart.
Yes,
right?
but I was born after he died. And it
So
evidently
it was an older brother.
It evidently was a terrible tragedy. How it affected my father and mother, my grandmother said that it was terrible, and when she told me. But it never heard anything from either my father or my mother about it. But in those days, women made a big pot of starch to starch clothes. And the baby, he was only, I don't think he was 2, and he was named after my grandfather, I guess my father's father, because I think his name was Bernhardt. And he fell into the pan of starch and was scalded to death. I can't think of anything more awful than that. I mean, it's bad enough to lose a child. I mean, that is to me is one of the world's great tragedies, to lose a child of any age. But somehow a death like that is so bad. Yeah. But I had, it was never mentioned as far as I know with my father, but my grandmother did mention it occasionally.
So you didn't know about it from your parents, your grandmother told you
Yes.
about it?
And as far as I tell it was a real rift between my father and my mother, because he blamed my mother for it. So that's what but I think I told you that she never liked my father, had a very dim view of him. So whether that was true or not, I don't know.
But the story was that your father blamed your mother for the death as a child?
Yes, yeah. That's the story I got, yeah.
And then she went on, your mother, of course, to have 2 more children. She had you, and
Yes,
then
George.
5 years later
And
she had
when
Stu.
George was only about 2 or so when this was that pandemic in 1918, the influenza. Well, I didn't go, I was very, very bad then too. I think they thought I was going to go too. But I
Had
don't
she
think-
been ill otherwise, or
She-
just that?
That I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I know there were no
Yeah,
antibiotics.
I don't think so.
But a
She-
healthy woman in her, say, 20s or 30s would have
Yeah.
been probably more likely to survive than either
Yeah.
the very old or the very young.
No,
But she didn't.
I didn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was only 8, and I don't remember any illnesses for that.
Yeah. You have a very positive attitude about life, but you have a very, looking back on it, at least from our perspective, very difficult childhood. Yeah, I mean, a childhood that might have, with a different person, resulted in someone who was
That's right. It could have been. It could have
unhappy,
left
or bitter,
very,
or
very deep scars. But
unable to
I
cope, or,
I
you know.
attributed it to the fact that I was able to put all that aside. Now it affected me very, very badly. Maybe another person might not have. You see, though with my father's lifestyle and the like. But me, it bothered me a lot. I just kind of withdrew, more or less. And unhappily withdrew. And it could have had left deep scars, but when Dad and I don't know, we had such a good relationship that I am very grateful for that.
Well, obviously it left deep scars, it would have to, but you turned that around and built a very successful life,
Yeah.
whereas other people might have been crushed by it or so
That's
affected
what
by
I'm
it
saying.
that they
That's-
didn't go on
No,
to
it didn't
to a
leave
good life.
any. I think about it a lot, and I'm guilty about a lot of it, but it didn't leave really deep. I'm able to appreciate what I have and have a very positive outlook.
Okay, I'm about out of tape.
What?
We can probably take a break here,
Okay.
if that's okay.